The observation deck of the Galactic Council headquarters stretched into impossible distances. Daniel Cross stood at the center of a massive circular platform, surrounded by 300 species from across the known galaxy. Above him, transparent walls revealed the void of space and distant stars. Below, tiers upon tiers of seats descended in concentric circles, each filled with alien representatives whose forms defied human imagination. Some delegates resembled crystalline formations that pulsed with inner light. Others appeared as clouds of gas contained within force fields. Creatures with too many limbs sat beside beings that seemed to exist partially in other dimensions. The air itself tasted strange, filtered through dozens of atmospheric processors to accommodate the diverse biology gathered in this place. Daniel wore the simple gray uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, no weapons, no protection. Just one human facing the combined authority of thousands of worlds. The chamber fell silent as Chancellor. Morak rose from the highest tier, the Chancellor. Belonged to a species called the Granite Lords, beings whose bodies appeared carved from living stone. He stood 4 meters tall, his 4 arms spreading wide as he addressed the assembly. Human Delegate Daniel Cross, Morak's voice rumbled through translation devices embedded throughout the chamber. You stand accused of violating our most sacred law. You accessed the Forbidden Archives without authorization. This crime carries only one sentence. Daniel remained motionless. His heart pounded in his chest, but his face showed nothing. Years of diplomatic training had taught him to control his expressions, to reveal only what he chose to reveal. The archives contain knowledge too dangerous for young species, Morak continued. Secrets that could destabilize galactic peace. By accessing these records, you have threatened the security of all civilized worlds. A murmur rippled through the assembled delegates. Some nodded their various heads or appendages in agreement. Others watched with expressions Daniel could not read. Before we carry out your sentence, Morak said, you may speak? What defense do you offer for this crime? Daniel took a slow breath. This was the moment. Everything humanity had planned for the past 70 years came down to the next few minutes. I offer no defense, Daniel said clearly. I accessed your archives deliberately. I knew the consequences. I did it anyway. Shocked whispers filled the chamber. Several delegates leaned forward in their seats. Then you confess? Morak seemed surprised. You admit your guilt freely? I admit I entered your archives and read your hidden histories, Daniel replied. But I do not admit guilt. Because what? I found there proves that this council has no moral authority to judge anyone. The chamber erupted in outrage. Delegates shouted in hundreds of languages, all filtered through the translation matrix into an angry babel of sound. Chancellor Morak raised his arms for silence. You dare insult this council? Morak's voice carried genuine anger now. We have maintained peace in this galaxy for 70,000 years. We have prevented countless wars. We have guided primitive species toward civilization. You have murdered 17 civilizations, Daniel said flatly. I found the records. Complete documentation of every species you decided was too dangerous, too ambitious, or too curious. Species that asked questions you did not want answered. You did not guide them. You eliminated them. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the ambient hum of the station's life support seemed to fade. These are lies, Morak declared, but his voice lacked conviction. Are they? Daniel looked up at the tiers of delegates. I invite everyone here to examine the evidence. The archives contain detailed records of engineered plagues, economic sabotage, and orchestrated wars, all designed to destroy civilizations that threatened council authority. He gestured to the empty air, and a small device in his pocket activated. Holographic images appeared throughout the chamber, showing documents from the Forbidden's archives. Species names, extinction dates, methods of elimination. This is the truth your leaders have hidden, Daniel said. This council does not maintain peace. It maintains control through fear and murder. Chancellor Morak's stone features hardened. Enough, your crimes are proven. Your lies change nothing. The sentence will be carried out. A sphere of energy materialized around Daniel, crackling with power. He felt the heat beginning to build. This was the Council's preferred method of execution: molecular incineration. Quick, efficient, and complete. Daniel looked up at the assembled species one last time. "My death changes everything," he said calmly. "Because humanity has been watching, we have been learning, and we have been preparing for this moment." "Empty threats from a dead man," Morak replied. "Execute him." The energy sphere blazed brilliant white. Daniel felt his skin beginning to burn. Pain flooded through his nervous system. He wanted to scream, but he forced himself to remain silent. His death had to mean something. It had to be worth the cost. The heat intensified, his vision blurred. The last thing he saw was Chancellor Morak's face, carved in stone, showing no emotion as a human being died in agony. Then nothing. The execution took 4 seconds. When the energy field dissipated, nothing remained of Daniel Cross except scattered atoms drifting in the recycled air. The chamber remained silent. Many delegates looked away, uncomfortable with what they had witnessed. Others showed satisfaction that justice had been served. Chancellor Morak returned to his seat. "Let this serve as a reminder. The laws of this council are absolute. Those who break them face the ultimate penalty." But before anyone could respond, every display screen in the chamber activated simultaneously. The council's supposedly impenetrable security systems had been breached. A human face appeared on the screens. A woman with gray hair and hard eyes wearing a military uniform. "This is Admiral Rebecca Stone of the Terran Space Command," the woman said. Her voice was cold and precise. "At 900 hours this morning, you executed our diplomat. You burned him alive for the crime of seeking truth. You have 24 hours to surrender those responsible and provide full access to your forbidden archives. If you refuse, humanity will consider this an act of war." Morak stood quickly. "You threaten us? Your species has barely 200 ships. We command the combined military might of thousands of worlds. This is madness." The image on the screens changed. It showed Earth's solar system, but something was wrong. The space around Earth's sun was filled with ships, hundreds of them. Then thousands. The display zoomed out, revealing an enormous fleet stretching across multiple star systems. A number appeared on the screen: 47,000 combat vessels. "How is this possible?" Morak breathed. "Our intelligence reports your capabilities at less than 3% of this number." Admiral Stone's face reappeared. "You made several mistakes, Chancellor. First, you assumed we showed you everything. Second, you thought 70 years of cooperation meant we trusted you. Third, you killed Daniel Cross." "One diplomat?" Morak said. "You would start a war over one man?" "Daniel was not just a diplomat," Stone replied. "He was our messenger. He entered your archives knowing you would kill him for it. His death was the signal we needed. The proof that this council solves problems through murder rather than justice." Stone leaned closer to the camera. "For 70 years, humanity has been building in secret. We have colonies you do not know about, technology you have not seen, alliances you never suspected. And now we are done hiding." The screens showed more images. Human ships positioned near every major council world. Strategic placement at trade route choke points. A military network spanning the entire galaxy. 24 hours, Stone repeated. Then we stopped asking nicely. The transmission ended. Chancellor Morak stood frozen, staring at the empty screens. Around him, the council chamber descended into chaos. Delegates shouted questions and accusations. Some demanded military action. Others called for negotiation. For the first time in 70,000 years, the Galactic Council faced a threat it had not anticipated and could not simply eliminate. Humanity had just declared war on the galaxy. And they had done it in a way that made clear they had already won. The war room deep beneath the council headquarters filled with military commanders from across the galaxy. Chancellor Morak stood at the head of the massive table, watching as tactical displays showed the positioning of human forces. The numbers made no sense. 200 ships had become 47,000 overnight. "This must be a deception," General Cross insisted. The insectoid warrior from the Hive Collective clicked his mandibles in agitation. No species could hide such a fleet. Our surveillance network spanned the entire galaxy. Admiral Thane uncoiled her serpentine body, rising to her full height. The Valorian military leader had conquered 40 systems during her career. She studied the displays with professional interest. The ships are real. I have verified the quantum signatures personally. These are genuine Terran vessels, not holograms or illusions. Then explain how they built them, Cross demanded. Where did they find the resources? The shipyards? The time? Crystalline being near the end of the table pulsed with soft blue light. Ambassador Nira of the Luminous Path spoke in harmonic tones that the translation systems rendered as words. Perhaps we should ask our intelligence division why they failed to detect this buildup. All eyes turned to Coordinator Vale, head of the Council Intelligence Network. The pale humanoid shifted uncomfortably in his seat. We had agents embedded in every human colony. They reported regularly. All data indicated limited military capabilities. Your agents were compromised, Nira said simply. The humans identified your spies and fed them false information for decades. While you watched their surface activities, they built entire civilizations underground. Vale activated his own display, showing cross-sections of human colony worlds. Beneath the small surface settlements were vast underground complexes. Cities housing millions. Industrial centers producing warships. Training facilities for military personnel. New Earth alone has 35 million inhabitants, Vale said quietly. We believed the population was 3 million. Every colony follows the same pattern. They excavated hundreds of levels below ground while we monitored empty surface structures. Chancellor Morak felt something unfamiliar crawling through his thoughts, fear, in his 900 years of life. He had never felt genuinely afraid. The Council's power had always been absolute. Now that certainty crumbled around him. Show the fleet positions, he commanded. The main display transformed into a galactic map. Red markers indicated human vessels. The pattern was unmistakable. Every major Council world had human ships nearby. Every trade route was covered. Every strategic position had been claimed. They can strike anywhere, Admiral Thane observed. And we cannot predict where. The humans have faster-than-light drives that exceed our own capabilities significantly. They could hit a dozen worlds simultaneously and be gone before we respond. Then we mobilize everything, General Cross said. We assemble the combined fleet and strike Earth directly. Eliminate the threat at its source. That is exactly what they expect, Nero warned. I have studied human warfare from their own history. They do not make threats unless they have already ensured victory. This ultimatum is not a demand. It is an announcement. Morak slammed one massive stone fist on the table. We cannot show weakness. If we yield to human demands, every species in the galaxy will question our authority. The Council's power is built on the perception of invincibility. Then that perception is already destroyed, Vale said. The humans broadcast their fleet strength on every communication channel in the galaxy. Every species with a radio receiver now knows the Council faces a military force it cannot match. Before anyone could respond, the room's displays flickered and changed without authorization. Admiral Rebecca Stone's face appeared on every screen simultaneously. Good afternoon, Council leaders, Stone said. Her tone suggested she was enjoying this. I thought you might like an update. Your intelligence coordinator is correct. We have identified and turned every spy you placed in human space. For 70 years, we fed your agents carefully crafted misinformation. The display split to show faces of various species. Dozens of them. They wore different uniforms representing Council member militaries. These are your officers, Stone continued. Serving aboard your ships? Stationed at your bases? Working in your command centers? Except they are not really your people. They are humans. We have spent decades integrating our personnel into your military structures. They hold positions at every level of your command chain. General Cross leaped to his feet. Impossible. We have genetic screening, identity verification, security protocols, which we bypassed, Stone said calmly. Human biology is surprisingly adaptable. With the right genetic modifications and cosmetic surgery, we can pass for many species. Your security systems check for what they expect to find. They were not designed to detect sophisticated infiltration by a species you considered primitive. One of the faces on the display spoke. He wore the uniform of a Valorian naval commander. My name is Commander Blake Torres. I have served in the Valorian fleet for 23 years. I was promoted to executive officer of the flagship last year. I have access to your complete battle plans, communication codes, and defensive strategies. Another face appeared, this one apparently a Hive Collective warrior. Lieutenant Rachel Kim, I command a strike squadron in your rapid response forces. I can disable the command structure of 3 battle groups before you even realize we have turned against you. More faces followed, each revealing another compromised position, each demonstrating the depth of human infiltration. Admiral Thane's scales had lost their usual luster. How many? She asked quietly. Enough, Stone replied. We have personnel in positions to cripple your combined fleet without firing a shot. But we would prefer not to. We are not here to conquer you. We are here to change you. What do you want? Morak demanded. The truth, Stone said. Complete access to the Forbidden's archives. Public release of all records regarding the 17 extinct civilizations. Full accountability for the council leaders who ordered those genocides. We maintained order, Morak insisted. Those species were dangerous. They threatened galactic stability. They threatened your control, Stone corrected. They developed technologies that would have made them independent. They asked questions about council authority. They refused to accept your dominance. So you killed them all. The displays changed again, showing documents from the archives, records of deliberate plague engineering, plans for economic warfare, strategies for cultural destruction, all bearing official council seals. Daniel Cross found these records, Stone said. He knew you would execute him for it. He sacrificed himself to prove what the council really is. A dictatorship hiding behind the pretense of democracy. Chancellor Morak stood motionless, his stone features unreadable. Around the table, military commanders looked at each other with growing uncertainty. The certainty that had guided their actions for millennia was dissolving. You have 18 hours remaining, Stone said. Use them wisely. The transmission ended, leaving the council leadership in silence. Finally, Ambassador Nira spoke. She is correct. We have been maintaining power through fear and elimination of threats. The humans have simply done to us what we have done to 17 other species. They infiltrated our systems, learned our weaknesses, and positioned themselves to strike. The difference is they are offering us a choice. We cannot yield, General Cross insisted. The moment we show weakness, the council collapses. The council has already collapsed, Nira replied. We simply have not admitted it yet. The humans have demonstrated capabilities we cannot match. They have exposed secrets we cannot deny. They have positioned forces we cannot counter. The only question now is whether we face the consequences with dignity or continue lying to ourselves. Morak looked at the holographic displays showing human ships positioned throughout the galaxy. A single species. Newcomers who had joined the council barely 70 years ago. They had outmaneuvered an institution that had endured for 70,000 years. How did we miss this? He asked quietly. We saw what we expected to see, Vale answered. Young species eager for guidance. Primitive civilizations grateful for our wisdom. We never considered they might be more advanced than they appeared. More cunning than we imagined. More patient than we could comprehend. They spent 70 years preparing for this moment, Admiral Thane added. While we believed we were mentoring them, they were studying us. Learning our weaknesses, building their strength, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal themselves. Morak turned away from the displays. For 900 years he had served the council believing its actions were necessary. Now he saw his entire worldview crumbling. What do we do? General Cross asked. The chamber fell silent. The most powerful military minds in the galaxy had no answer. Somewhere above them, human ships waited with patient menace. 47,000 vessels holding the fate of civilization in their hands. The countdown continued. 17 hours remained. The emergency session of the Galactic Assembly convened 12 hours after Admiral Stone's ultimatum. Representatives from 847 species filled the vast chamber. But the atmosphere was completely different from Daniel Cross's execution. Fear had replaced authority. Questions had replaced certainty. Chancellor Morak stood at the central podium, his stone features showing cracks that might have been age or stress. The weight of 70,000 years of hidden crimes pressed down on him with crushing force. This assembly is called to address the human ultimatum, Morak began. His voice lacked its usual commanding presence. We must decide how to respond to their demands. Delegate Thora of the Parvian Collective rose from her seat. The small, gray-furred being spoke with surprising force. The question is not how to respond to demands. The question is why we hid the truth for so long. I have reviewed the archive records that humans broadcast across every communication channel. The evidence is undeniable. This council committed genocide against 17 civilizations. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Many delegates had spent the past hours reviewing those same records. The proof was overwhelming and horrifying. Context matters, Morak said, but his voice wavered. Those species posed existential threats. The Viridian Collective developed energy technology that would have destabilized economic systems across 200 worlds. The Architect Guild created teleportation that would have broken trade route monopolies. We made difficult LT choices to preserve stability. You made convenient choices to preserve power. A new voice interrupted. An elderly figure rose from the upper tiers. Ambassador Carroll of the Morphean Alliance was one of the Council's oldest members. He had served for 6,000 years, longer than most species had possessed space travel. I am 9,000 years old, Carroll said, his voice heavy with emotion. I have served this council for most of that time. I voted to eliminate the Viridians. I authorized the plague that destroyed them. I did these things because I believed Chancellor Morak's words about necessary sacrifice. The assembly waited in complete silence, but I have spent 12 hours reading the complete archives. Carroll continued. Every case, every justification, every eliminated species, and I have realized something that shames me to my core. His voice strengthened. We did not eliminate threats to galactic stability. We eliminated competition. Every species we marked for destruction had one thing in common. They were becoming our equals. The Viridians' technology would have made them economically independent. The architects would have broken our monopoly on transportation. The Singer Collective would have made our translation services obsolete. Carroll turned to face Morak directly. We were not protecting the galaxy, Chancellor. We were protecting our privileged position at the top of it, and I helped you do it. Morak stood silent for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. You are correct, gasps echoed through the chamber. Ambassador Carroll speaks truth, Morak continued. His voice was hollow, defeated. I have spent the past hours examining our actions through clear eyes. Without the justifications and rationalizations I have relied upon for centuries. And I see it now. We became the very tyranny we claimed to prevent. He looked up at the assembled representatives. I cannot undo what I have done. I cannot restore the Viridians or the Architects or any of the 17 lost civilizations. But I can offer this. Complete admission of guilt? No excuses. No justifications. Just truth. The assembly erupted in chaotic discussion. Some delegates demanded punishment. Others called for understanding. A few tried to defend the Council's past actions. Admiral Stone's face appeared on the central displays, interrupting the chaos. Chancellor Morak, do you formally accept responsibility for crimes committed under your authority? Morak met her gaze through the screen. I do. And do you acknowledge these actions constitute crimes against all sentient life? The chamber fell absolutely silent. Every being present understood the magnitude of this moment. I acknowledge it, Morak said quietly. I was wrong. The council was wrong. And we must face the consequences of that wrongness. Stone nodded slowly. Then humanity offers the following terms. The council is disbanded immediately. A new galactic assembly will be formed with equal representation for all species. Full access to all historical records will be granted to everyone. You and your co-conspirators will stand trial under fair laws with transparent proceedings. What guarantee do we have of fairness? Someone asked from the crowd. None, Stone replied bluntly. Just as the 17 extinct species had no guarantee when you judged them. The difference is we are offering you trials instead of executions, evidence instead of assumptions, justice instead of convenience. She paused, then continued. And humanity is making one additional commitment. We are releasing all our technology to everyone. Every advancement we developed in secret, every military innovation, every hidden capability, complete transparency. Within 1 week, every species will have access to our entire technical database. Shocked silence greeted this announcement. Delegate Thora spoke first. You would give away your advantages? Your military superiority? We never wanted superiority, Stone answered. We wanted equality. A galaxy where no single species can dominate others because everyone has access to the same tools. Where innovation is shared instead of hoarded. Where asking questions does not carry a death sentence. This is madness, someone protested. You have spent 70 years building secret capabilities. Now you simply give them away? Daniel Cross did not die so humanity could replace the Council, Stone said firmly. He died so no one could ever do what the Council did again. Not us, not anyone. We are betting everything on the hope that a transparent, well-informed galaxy will make better choices than a secretive, authoritarian one. Commander Torres appeared beside Stone on the displays. The human who had infiltrated the Valorian fleet spoke calmly. We have already begun the data transfer. Every species represented here now has access to our shipbuilding techniques, weapon systems, propulsion technology, and medical advances, everything. You are arming everyone in the galaxy, Admiral Thane observed, including potential enemies. Or we are creating a level playing field, Stone countered, where no one can dominate because everyone has equal capabilities. That is what real equality looks like. Not comfortable words and symbolic gestures, actual shared power. The assembly dissolved into intense debate. Some delegates saw wisdom in the human approach. Others saw only danger and chaos. Chancellor Morak stood silent at the center of the storm. His stone body seemed heavier than ever, burdened by the weight of his crimes and the realization of his failures. Finally, he raised his arms for silence. I will submit to human terms. I will stand trial. I will accept whatever sentence is deemed appropriate. He looked around the chamber. But I ask one thing of this assembly. Learn from my mistakes. I believed I was serving the greater good. I believed authority granted wisdom. I believed control was necessary for peace. I was wrong about all of it. His voice grew stronger. The humans have taught us something we forgot long ago. That power without accountability becomes tyranny. That authority without transparency becomes oppression. That certainty without questions becomes dogma. Morak descended from the podium. I'm ready to face justice. Let it be fair. Let it be public. Let it serve as a reminder of what happens when leaders believe themselves above the law. Human security personnel entered the chamber. They were courteous but firm as they placed restraints on Morak and the other council leaders present. No violence. No humiliation. Just professional arrest of those accused of terrible crimes. As they led him away, Morak looked back at the assembly one final time. 847 species watching in silence. For 70,000 years, the Council had ruled them with hidden fear and quiet elimination of threats. That era was ending, a new age was beginning, one built on transparency instead of secrecy, on questions instead of certainty, on shared power instead of concentrated authority. The galaxy would never be the same. And somewhere in the void of space, Daniel Cross's sacrifice had meaning beyond anything he could have imagined. One man asking dangerous questions had toppled an empire older than human civilization. The trial would come. Justice would be served. Systems would be rebuilt, but the most important change had already occurred. The galaxy had learned that tyranny, no matter how ancient or established, could be challenged. And sometimes against all odds. Tyranny could fall. The trial began 3 months later on New Horizon, a neutral world selected specifically because it had no history with either the Council or humanity. The facility was purpose-built for these proceedings, designed to accommodate representatives from every species in the galaxy. Commander Jennifer Walsh stood in the prosecution circle, preparing to present evidence that would define the future of galactic civilization. She had spent 90 days reviewing 70,000 years of archived history. The weight of that knowledge showed in her tired eyes. "Honored delegates," Walsh began, addressing the massive assembly, "we gather to judge the greatest systematic crime in recorded history. The deliberate elimination of 17 civilizations, totaling billions of sentient beings, carried out by those who claim to represent justice and peace." Defense Coordinator Holland, a Nexian appointed to ensure fair proceedings, rose to respond. "My colleague speaks of great crimes, but we must consider historical context. The galaxy before Council governance was violent chaos. Warfare consumed entire star systems. The death toll across those millennia exceeded anything the Council did to maintain order." Walsh nodded acknowledgement. "You raise a fair point. The pre-Council era was brutal, but that does not justify what followed. Let me present Case 1, the Viridian Collective. Holographic displays activated throughout the chamber. Images of a beautiful civilization appeared. Crystal cities catching starlight. Advanced technologies integrated with natural environments. Art and science flourishing together. 4,000 years ago, the Viridians joined the Council," Walsh continued. "They were peaceful, curious, and brilliant. Within 50 years, they developed revolutionary energy generation that could have freed every species from resource scarcity forever. The images shifted to show technical specifications and power output calculations. The technology was extraordinary. The Council deemed this advancement destabilizing," Walsh said. "Too much change, too." Quickly, economic systems across 200 worlds depended on traditional energy markets. So the Council made a decision. New images appeared. Medical reports, genetic analysis, plague progression maps. They engineered a virus targeting Viridian genetic markers specifically, Walsh explained. Within 3 years, the population dropped from 12 billion to 40 million. Their civilization collapsed. Their technology was seized and buried in the archives. The survivors were scattered across the galaxy, forbidden from ever gathering again. She paused, letting the horror sink in. This was not war. This was not defensive action. This was genocide committed to protect economic interests. Chancellor Morak stood from his position among the accused. Despite his restraints, he carried himself with dignity. "I was not yet Chancellor during the Viridian incident, but I have reviewed the records. The decision was made to prevent galaxy-wide economic collapse. Millions of beings across hundreds of worlds depended on those energy markets. Destroying them would have caused chaos. So you protected economic systems by eliminating an entire species," Walsh said. "That is your justification?" "I offer context, not justification," Morak replied. "The Council made impossible choices. Save billions by sacrificing millions. Prevent potential chaos by accepting certain tragedy. We bore the burden of these decisions." Walsh gestured, bringing up new displays. "Then let me show you 16 more impossible choices." For the next hours, she methodically presented each case. The architects who developed teleportation. The singers whose communication abilities threatened Council monopolies. The forge masters whose industrial capacity could have uplifted primitive species too quickly, each case followed the same pattern. Innovation that threatened council authority. Quiet deliberation behind closed doors. Systematic elimination disguised as natural disasters or unfortunate plagues. By the time she finished, the assembly sat in stunned silence. The cumulative weight of evidence was overwhelming. These were not defensive actions, Walsh said quietly. These were executions of competition. The council maintained its position by ensuring no species could ever become strong enough to challenge its authority. The trial continued for weeks. Experts testified. Philosophers debated utilitarian calculations. Historians provided context about pre-council violence, but the turning point came from an unexpected voice. Ambassador Carroll rose to speak. The ancient Morphian looked even older than his 9,000 years as he addressed the assembly. "I voted to eliminate the Viridians," he said, his voice filled with profound sadness. "I authorized the plague. I believed we were preventing chaos and protecting galactic stability." He paused, struggling with emotion. "But I have spent these months examining not just the specific cases but the pattern they form. And I have realized something that cuts me to my core." His voice strengthened. "We did not eliminate threats to peace. We eliminated equals. Every species we destroyed had committed no crime except becoming too advanced, too independent, too capable of questioning our authority. We were not guardians of civilization. We were gatekeepers preventing anyone from joining us at the top." Carroll turned to face Morak. "We told ourselves we bore a terrible burden. We claimed we made sacrifices for the greater good. But the truth is simpler and more shameful. We were afraid. Afraid of losing power. Afraid of becoming irrelevant. Afraid of having to share authority with species we considered inferior." The ancient being's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "I am guilty of the same crimes as Chancellor Morak. I deserve the same punishment. And I will spend whatever remains of my life trying to earn forgiveness I do not deserve." The assembly erupted in debate. Many delegates who had defended the council's actions now looked uncertain. The admission from such a respected figure carried enormous weight. Chancellor Morak stood slowly. For a long moment he simply looked at Carroll, then he turned to address the entire assembly. "Ambassador Carroll speaks truth," Morak said. "I have spent months in detention reviewing our actions. Not through the comfortable lens of council authority, but through the eyes of those we judged. And I see it clearly now. We became tyrants. We convinced ourselves that our power gave us wisdom, that our age granted us the right to decide which species deserved to exist." He looked directly at the human delegation. "Your species forced us to confront what we had become." Daniel Cross died asking questions we should have been asking ourselves for millennia. Why did we fear change? Why did we monopolize power? Why did we believe ourselves qualified to judge the worthiness of entire civilizations? Morak's stone features seemed to crack with genuine emotion. "I cannot restore what I destroyed. I cannot undo 70,000 years of systematic oppression. But I can offer complete acceptance of responsibility. No excuses, no justifications, just acknowledgement that we were wrong." The trial concluded 6 weeks after it began. The verdict was unanimous. Chancellor Morak and 42 other council leaders were found guilty of crimes against sentience. But the sentence was not execution or imprisonment. Instead, they were condemned to spend the rest of their lives working to restore what they had destroyed. Morak was assigned to the Viridian Restoration Project, helping survivors rebuild their civilization. Other council leaders were sent to work with the scattered remnants of species they had tried to eliminate. It was, in many ways, a harsher punishment than death. They would spend centuries facing the consequences of their choices every single day. Commander Walsh watched as they led Morak away. The ancient being who had commanded the galaxy's authority now walked toward a life of humble service. Admiral Stone appeared beside her. "Do you think he has actually changed?" Walsh considered the question carefully. "I think he finally understands what he was. Whether that understanding leads to genuine transformation or just deeper guilt remains to be seen." And the galaxy? Stone asked. Can it really build something better? That depends on everyone here, Walsh replied, gesturing at the assembled delegates. We have dismantled the old authority structure. We have exposed the crimes that structure committed. Now comes the harder part. Building systems that prevent this from happening again. Stone nodded. Tyranny is persistent. In 20 years or 200 or 2000, someone will try to accumulate power again. Some faction will decide they know better than everyone else. Then we build systems to catch them early, Walsh said. Transparency instead of secrecy. Questions instead of blind obedience. Shared power instead of concentrated authority. It is not perfect protection, but it is better than ignorance. They stood together, watching delegates from 847 species, beginning the complex work of building a new galactic government. One based on principles the Council had abandoned long ago. Justice had been served, but the real work was just beginning. Admiral Rebecca Stone stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, watching ships from hundreds of species move through space in peaceful commerce. 6 months had passed since the trial concluded. The galaxy was learning to function without the Council's absolute authority. It was chaos. Glorious, frustrating, hopeful chaos. You look tired, Commander Torres said, joining her at the viewport. The man who had spent 23 years infiltrated in the Valorian fleet now served as liaison between human forces and the new Galactic Assembly. I am tired, Stone admitted. 70 years of careful planning. 3 months of crisis. Half a year of rebuilding. I am ready for retirement. Good thing you are scheduled to retire next month, Torres replied with a slight smile. Though I suspect the galaxy will not let you rest. Stone laughed softly. The galaxy can learn to solve its own problems. That was the entire point. A chime announced a visitor. Ambassador Lara of the Nexian Collective approached them. The crystalline being refracted the starlight beautifully as she moved. Admiral Stone, Commander Torres, Lyra greeted them formally. I bring news from the Assembly. The Coalition for Galactic Stability is gaining support. They now represent 89 species advocating for a return to centralized authority. Stone felt a familiar tension settle in her shoulders. That was faster than expected. How long has the new democratic system been functioning? 6 months? And already there are factions calling for the old ways. Not exactly the old ways, Lyra clarified. They argue for efficient governance, quick decision-making, streamlined authority. They claim the Democratic Assembly is too slow, too chaotic, too vulnerable to manipulation. Those are the same arguments the original council used 70,000 years ago, Torres observed. Efficiency justifying authoritarian control. Safety requiring surrendered freedom. Precisely, Lyra agreed. Which is why I am forming a new organization. An independent monitoring agency dedicated to identifying emerging threats to galactic freedom. I want humanity involved. Stone studied the Nexian carefully. You are describing an intelligence network. Shadow organizations have a habit of becoming what they oppose. Which is why we design it correctly from the beginning, Lyra Reppel. I'd complete transparency in operations. Public reporting of all findings. No authority to act, only to observe and warn. We would be the galaxy's truth-tellers, nothing more. And when truth becomes inconvenient? Stone asked. When exposing corruption threatens powerful interests? What happens to your truth-tellers then? Then we discover whether this new galaxy has genuine commitment to freedom or merely preference for comfortable lies, Lyra answered. But someone must watch. Someone must ask questions. Daniel Cross died, proving that one person asking uncomfortable questions can change everything. Torres leaned against the viewport. She has a point. The Coalition for Stability will not stop with speeches. They will work within the system, slowly eroding protections until they have recreated the Council's authority under a new name. Unless someone exposes their methods as they develop. Stone was quiet for a long moment. Below them, ships from 1,000 worlds moved in organized patterns, trade, diplomacy, cultural exchange. All the activities that the Council had carefully controlled for millennia, now happening freely. If we do this, Stone said finally, it must be done right. Full transparency. Regular rotation of leadership. Strict limits on authority. And the moment this organization starts acting like the old Council, we disband it immediately. Agreed, Lyra said. I will help establish the protocols, Torres added. But I am retiring next month along with Admiral Stone. We have done our part. The next generation needs to take responsibility. Fair, Lyra acknowledged. Though the galaxy will remember what you accomplished. 2 humans and a diplomatic sacrifice that toppled 70,000 years of tyranny. Stone turned away from the viewport. The galaxy should remember Daniel Cross. He was the one who gave his life. We just followed through on his plan. Do you think he knew it would work? Torres asked. Or was he simply hoping? Both, Stone replied. Daniel was brilliant. He planned every step carefully. But he also understood that some things require faith. Faith that truth matters. Faith that people care about justice. Faith that exposing evil will inspire good. They walked toward the exit together, 3 beings from different worlds united by common purpose. What will you do after retirement? Lyra asked. Stone smiled. I'm going home to Earth, going to see my family, going to remember what we fought for in the first place. And if the galaxy calls you back? Then the galaxy will learn to call someone else, Stone said firmly. We cannot build a system that depends on heroes. We need institutions that function even when no one special is leading them. That is the only way this survives. They reached the central hub of Unity Station. Delegates from hundreds of species argued policy in open forums. Scientists shared research without restriction. Artists displayed work from cultures across the galaxy. It was messy, inefficient, sometimes frustrating beyond measure. It was also beautiful. You know what the strangest part is? Torres said quietly. For 70 years, we built a secret empire. We accumulated power and positioned forces and prepared for war. And now we are giving it all away. That is not strange, Stone replied. That is the entire point. Power does not corrupt. Unchecked power corrupts. We are proving that a species can have enormous capability and choose not to use it for domination. Will others believe that? Lyra asked. Will they see restraint as strength or weakness? Time will tell, Stone said. But at least we are giving them the choice. The Council never offered choices. They offered obedience or elimination. We are betting everything that most species, given freedom and information, will choose cooperation over conflict. An announcement echoed through the station. The Galactic Assembly was convening for another session. More debates. More proposals. More species learning to govern themselves collectively. Stone watched delegates hurrying toward the chamber. Among them were representatives from the restored Viridian settlements. Survivors of the Council's genocide, now participating in galactic governance as equals. He would have liked seeing this, she said softly. Daniel? Torres asked. Yes, he believed that asking questions was more important than having answers. That the process of seeking truth mattered as much as the truth itself. Look at them. She gestured at the diverse crowd. 847 species learning to ask questions together. Learning that disagreement does not require elimination. They stood in silence, watching the delegates disappear into the assembly chamber. The Coalition for Stability will not give up, Lyra warned. They will work for years, maybe decades, slowly rebuilding authoritarian structures. This fight is far from over. Then the next generation will fight it, Stone said. Every generation must choose freedom again, must decide that liberty is worth the inconvenience and chaos. That is not a burden. That is the price of self-governance. Torres checked his chronometer. Our shuttle leaves in an hour. Last chance to change your mind about retirement. Not changing my mind, Stone confirmed. I am done being Admiral Rebecca Stone, architect of humanity's secret empire. Time to remember how to be just Rebecca. a person who lives in the galaxy we helped create rather than commanding it. As they walked toward the docking bay, Stone allowed herself one final look back at the station. Somewhere in there, the future was being decided. Not by military force or political maneuvering, but by hundreds of species talking, arguing, and hopefully learning to trust each other. It was fragile, uncertain, built on hope more than certainty, but it was real. Daniel Cross had died asking one simple question. Why? The galaxy was still finding answers, would still be finding answers for generations to come, and that, Stone realized, was exactly as it should be. Some questions do not have final answers. Some struggles continue forever. Some principles require eternal vigilance, but at least now, everyone was free to ask. Free to question, free to challenge authority, free to build something better. The shuttle carried Stone away from Unity Station, away from military command, away from the center of galactic power. Behind her, civilization continued its messy, beautiful, chaotic experiment in democracy. Ahead of her, Earth waited, home, family, life beyond war and strategy. She had spent 70 years building an empire in secret. Now she would spend whatever time remained learning to live without that power, learning to be just one person among billions, learning that sometimes the greatest strength is choosing not to rule. The galaxy would face new challenges. New tyrants would rise. New crises would emerge, but the foundation had been laid. The precedent established, tyranny could be challenged, authority could be questioned. And sometimes, against impossible odds, freedom could win. Daniel Cross's sacrifice had proven that one person could change everything. Now 847 species would prove whether that change could last. The answer would take generations to discover. But for the first time in 70,000 years, the galaxy had the freedom to find out. Retriclod can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.